Hey there, I'm Katie from Addicted to DIY, and today I'm going to be sharing with you how I built this mobile miter saw bench. I'm partnering with Rockler Woodworking and Hardware to bring you the plans and tutorial for this 8-foot long bench. It has tons of storage space, locking casters that allow you to move it around your shop, plus a T-track system with stop blocks and a tape measure to help you make accurate multiple cuts for your projects. Different saw brands have different dimensions, so I tried to make sure the space between the two tabletops and the angles I cut off would accommodate the different saw brands. That way, the only measurement you'll have to come up with yourself is the actual height of the tabletop. I got started by cutting all of my plywood down into manageable pieces, then finishing off the cuts on my table saw and miter saw. I then drilled all of my pocket holes to begin assembly of the main carcass of the miter saw bench. I glued and clamped the ends to the top and bottom of the bench, then attached them with 1 1/4 inch pocket screws. I used my rear support stretchers as blocks to determine where the center divider pieces would go, then attached them with glue and pocket screws. Once the center dividers were in place, I attached the rear stretchers. I ripped 3-inch strips of 3/4 inch plywood down to make the base of the miter saw bench. I attached the pieces with 1 1/4 inch wood screws and glue. Once the base was in place, I attached the casters. I used a total of 8 3-inch swivel casters with locking casters on each corner of the bench to keep it stable. I used 1 1/4 inch number 12 screws with finishing washers to attach them. I wanted the shelves inside the cabinets to be pull-out shelves, so I ripped plywood down into 3-inch strips and built shallow drawers for tools and hardware. I used 3/4 inch plywood for the bottoms and attached them with wood glue and 1 1/4 inch wood screws. For the drawer slides, I used 22-inch side mount drawer slides from Rockler. These have a 100-pound weight capacity. I don't see myself loading them up with that much weight, but I do like to keep my options open. The bottom pull-out shelf is just off the bottom of the box, so I only needed to measure the top shelf placement. I decided about 12.5 inches was a good spacing to ensure I could fit taller items on each shelf. I installed the drawer slides with my universal drawer slide jig from Rockler. I bought this a few years ago and it makes installing drawer slides so much easier. It holds them perfectly in place while you attach them to the sides of the project you're building. Once I had the drawer slides attached to the main box, I installed the slides to the pull-out shelves. For the cabinet doors, I used Euro hinges. I marked and pre-drilled the holes for the screws, then attached them to the box and to the doors. This bench is built to the specs of my miter saw, so this step could possibly vary depending on the type of saw you have. Measure the height of the tabletop on your miter saw to determine how tall the tabletop of the miter saw bench should be. In this case, mine was 4.5 inches. I ripped 3/4 inch plywood down to 3 3/4 inches wide to make up the frame of my tabletop. I also took into account the swing of the miter saw table and used those measurements to cut the corners off of the tabletop with my jigsaw. I then attached the tabletop with wood glue and 1 1/4 inch wood screws. The fences on each side of the miter saw are 34 inches long. The T-tracks from the Rockler are 36 inches long, but they can be cut down to size. To preserve all of the screw holes on the T-track, I cut 1 inch off each end with my grinder, then filed them down to get rid of any sharp edges. You'll want to perfectly position your miter saw on the bench to determine where your fences will line up. Once I had my saw in place, I squared it up with the plywood fence pieces. I secured them in place, then attached them with wood glue and pocket screws. I then added the T-track and attached it with 5/8 inch wood screws. To make sure your saw is always square with your fence on the miter saw bench, you'll want to bolt it in place. Unfortunately, the holes for my saw lined up perfectly over the center dividers of my bench, so I had to get creative. I bought some threaded insert nuts, 1/4 inch bolts, and washers to secure the saw in place. If the holes on your saw are clear of those, you can drill right through the plywood and attach the saw without the needed inserts. The double T-track not only holds the stop blocks, but it also has a track for a tape measure insert. This additional accessory comes with a black plastic insert and an adhesive tape measure strip. The plastic insert will be a very tight fit, and you may need to shave it down a bit to get it to fit into the T-track. I had to shave mine down a bit on the bottom and also on the sides. It should still be a very tight fit though, as you don't want the tape measure moving when it's in place. Measure the distance between your saw blade and the edge of the fence to start your tape measure at that measurement. I snipped the waste off with tin snips, then removed the adhesive backing and attached it to the black strip. After that, my miter saw bench was done. I haven't really decided how I'm going to fill all of the cabinet space just yet, but I'm definitely excited to get started putting this bench to good use. It's a huge improvement over the makeshift tabletop sitting on sawhorses that I've been using for the past several years. Special thanks to Rockler Woodworking and Hardware for sponsoring this tutorial. You can find all the links for the products I used below in the description. For more videos just like this, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and also check out my other video tutorials. Thanks so much for watching.